Good morning and welcome everyone to our VMAP meeting today. Appreciate your time. Appreciate you coming here today. It's going to be a pretty long day, but we'll try to get through it as quick as we can. Hopefully we're going to have a lot of information shared, and I'm going to learn a lot about the state and rural and local water and wastewater, and then we're going to end up with a really good a group that's worked really hard with Tug Fork River and the work that they do. So anyway, thank you for being here today. If you have a phone, please silence that and ask the secretary to go ahead and call the roll.
Senator Berg, Senator Boswell, Senator Higdon, Senator Nunn, here. Senator Reed, here. Senator Richardson, here. Senator Smith, Senator Tishner, Senator Wilson, here. Senator Yates, present. Representative Blanton, present. Representative Bratcher, present. Representative Dossett, present. Representative Freeland,
present.
Representative Fugit, here. Representative Gooch, Representative Hart, Representative Johnson,
here.
Representative Lewis, Representative Maddox, Representative Massaroni, present. Representative Moore,
Here.
Representative Proctor, present. Representative Roberts, Representative Sharp,
Present.
Representative Stevenson, Representative Tackett Lafferty, Representative Thomas,
Present.
Representative Wesley,
here.
Co-Chair Deneen,
Here.
Co-Chair McCool.
Here. Okay, we have a quorum, so we can do our business for today. A little announcement first, and I'll turn to the co-chairman, Deneen. We have a birthday today, so I'd like to wish Representative Massaroni happy birthday. I think she's 25, right? Yeah. Chairman Deneen, do you have any comments this morning?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had a tragic loss of life at Fort Knox here recently. A soldier in training there unfortunately lost his life during some land maneuvers there, and so I would ask that we all keep him and his family in our prayers and thoughts. He was from New Jersey, so anytime we lose a member of our armed services, it's a tragedy. And I just would ask that, again, you keep them, their family and our soldiers there that served alongside of him in your thoughts and prayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll go ahead and have the Pledge of Allegiance. Senator Reed's going to lead us in the pledge, and then we're going to ask Representative Fugit for the prayer.
Thank you so much for the privilege to come to you in prayer and to talk to you and to meet with you. We thank you so much for allowing us to serve you, people, Lord, all across Kentucky. Lord, we lift up the family of the soldier that was killed. Oh, Lord, I pray that you bless them with your comfort and your peace, and may they claim the promises in your word that is available. Bless this day, we pray, with your wisdom and your guidance.
Thank you. Okay, the first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. Do you have a motion to approve the minutes? Motion made. Second. All in favor say aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Okay, again, just to recap what we're going to do today, we're going to start at the state level and then go down to the rural water and then a very local county level on the water and wastewater, and they end up with an organization that works volunteer to keep the Tug River clean, and I think it's kind of led into other places doing it at the same time. So I'm expecting to learn a lot how it all works together. I appreciate your time. So if the Kentucky Division of Water will come on up, and we'll start from there. And today, like I said, it's focused on public protection, and water is certainly a part of that and very important to all of our lives and good clean water. So If you would, go ahead and introduce yourself and start your presentation.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Tony Hatton. I'm Commissioner of the Department for Environmental Protection and the Acting Director of the Kentucky Division of Water.
Good morning. My name is Amanda LaFever. I'm Deputy Commissioner for the Department for Environmental Protection. Thank you.
Well, I'm sure you all, I'm assuming you all have a copy of the PowerPoint. Things about PowerPoints is I don't think they're meant to be read, so I won't use a lot of our time reading through it. I'll try to hit the real high points and really try to address some of the questions or issues that you all wanted to hear about in some recent communication with the agency. So I've really tried to tailor this presentation in that manner. I think some of the questions that we received is how does the State Division of Water function exactly? What all does it do? And what is our planning? You know, water and wastewater obviously are very important. They're a necessity of life, and they're also very critical for recreational use and economic use. It has economic worth, and so we all know that. But today we'll dig down into the nitty-gritty a little bit and talk about it a little bit more. There was a question about strategic plans, and we'll provide you information on that because we do have 4-year strategic plans that we always prepare. Sometimes they don't change a lot because things don't necessarily change from one 4-year to the next, but we're working on updating that now. And so this PowerPoint really is like soup to nuts what happens in the Kentucky Division of Water. And of course, obviously, by looking at the agenda, this is sort of, you know, water is sort of by committee kind of thing. I mean, there's lots of people that are involved in it and have responsibilities, the department being one, and you're going to speak with rural water. You're going to speak with some citizens who have concerns and issues, and it's always good when they engage in the process. And there are others as well. There's the federal government that has a hand in this because we implement primarily federal programs. So it's sort of a by committee kind of thing, not talking about this committee, but in general, lots of different folks are involved in this. Just want to give you just a few water facts. You know, it's pretty common knowledge Kentucky is a water-rich state. You know, we've got a lot of Ohio River shoreline. We have a whole lot of surface water in the state that's good water for the most part. Better than some of our friends to the south, where we don't have to deal a lot with tannins and other things naturally in the water that make it difficult to treat. There's 45 major lakes in the state. We do have still folks in Kentucky that rely on groundwater for domestic use and particularly for agricultural use. And you'll see most of the groundwater still used in the state is along that I-65 corridor. You know, think of Mammoth Cave, the big karst area down that corridor. And then the Jackson Purchase is almost entirely relying on groundwater for drinking water and agricultural purposes. We don't have as many folks using groundwater as you might have said 20 years ago, but there's still a fair number of Kentuckians that rely on it. Just to give you an idea of the scope here in Kentucky, there's 428 public water systems. That's not as near as many of our surrounding states. That's a good number. We'll talk about it here in a few minutes about how opportunities that might come up to even have fewer public water systems while still supplying water. We'll talk about that. You see 263 water treatment plants. So there are water treatment plants that actually ship water to other places. So there's more water systems than there are water treatment plants. 1.9 million service connections, 200 billion gallons of water treated a year in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And I know Representative McCool, it's something that's very important to you, but those folks who are responsible for taking raw water and turning it into safe drinking water, that's a very important job that we don't often think about. You know, I talked to some young kids in a science class a few weeks ago, and I told them, I said, you got to remember, water doesn't just come from a pipe. There's a lot that has to happen to get it from where it's at to where it's safe for you to drink and consume and use. So very important work that they do. Now, I want to explain this slide here because, you know, in 2023, J.D. Power said Kentucky had very high quality drinking water. That doesn't mean that that's the case everywhere in Kentucky. You may hear about some of that a little bit later on today. You know, since 2020, Kentucky has expanded its availability for municipally treated water to nearly 97% of its population, which is a good thing. Along the way, though, there are challenges, and we'll talk about them a little bit later, with infrastructure, aging infrastructure. And sometimes that means that in certain localities where there's maybe financial challenges, aging infrastructure, that water capacity and water quality aren't necessarily as good. Well, not necessarily aren't as good as there may be in other areas of the state, but on the whole, the state's done a pretty good job of providing capacity and quality drinking water. So if you're talking about planning and strategy, we want to talk with you a little bit about our programs, in the division. And when you talk about water, it starts up here and it ends here. That's just the way that it works in nature. So we have programs that are designed to protect and enhance it as best we can with the authority we have from the top of the watershed all the way down to the surface water. We have a watershed non-point source program. You get a lot of impacts to surface water just from stormwater runoff, especially in urban areas and places like that. We also have what's called a KPDS program, where it's a federal program where if somebody, say you have an industrial discharge or a mining, non-coal, coal mining discharge, or maybe wastewater, you have to get a permit that will set the limit for the amount of contaminants you can discharge into a receiving water. That's a pretty important program. I did want to mention, I don't know if anybody here is familiar with PFAS, but it's certainly a developing issue. It's an emerging contaminant. I won't go into a whole lot of it, maybe a little bit more later on, but we do spend a lot of time and resources in the department especially trying to assist drinking water systems in analyzing their raw water and their source water, because there are going to be federal rules that are going to come to bear in 2029 that will obviously result in a need for funding and long-term operation and maintenance dollars for these water systems to be able to stay compliant with the federal rule. There's a lot of conversation about whether or not that'll get changed. There's always been a lot of conversation about whether or not the numbers that EPA set were legitimate. And, at the end of the day, that's not really the point. The concentrations and standards are out there, and we're working with local water treatment plants to try to get there by 2029. I'll talk about that a little bit more just a little while. Also, if you're going to put in water lines or something like that, infrastructure, we have the responsibility of reviewing that to make sure it's sized right, it's piped right, you've planned for the future. So a lot of the engineering pieces of that are also a part of the responsibility of the Division of Water. And we also do a lot of inspection work for, compliance related. So we provide regulatory oversight to more than 400 water systems. We have right now currently nearly 9,000 KPDS discharge permits for a variety of different types of activities. And as I said, we review all the engineering plans for infrastructure. So I wanted to broaden it out a little bit and talk about what we do to plan and how our programs and our activities, that sort of is our plan. That's how it works out. We have improved our public outreach. We have, you can go on Kentucky's health portal and find out nearly any information you want that we have available about a water system or a surface water or source water, what the water quality is based on work that we do. We do ambient source water, surface water, fish tissue, and groundwater sampling across the state every year in the Division of Water. We also provide information to the Kentucky Infrastructure Authority because we're on the ground a lot. We inspect these facilities. They may ask us questions about this particular request for a loan or a grant or something like that, and we provide information and input into that very important process. And it is because there's always more demand than there is money. And in this particular case, that certainly is the case. As a matter of practice, we emphasize regionalization at every opportunity that we have to do that. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. And I think Amanda's going to talk a little bit about maximizing our water and wastewater operator training opportunities. Again, I'll just say it one more time. The person who's working at the water treatment plant has a very important job. That's to make sure when the water comes into the plant, it's properly treated so that when we get it to consume it, it's got to be as good as it can possibly be. And so oftentimes that's a challenge, especially in smaller communities in terms of pay, things like that. It's just a reality that we all deal with. I think some of you probably already know that, but I can't overemphasize how important that work actually is. And I've given you a link there if you're interested in seeing the Cabinet Strategic Plan. I invite you to do that. It's all air, water, and waste because that's what we deal with in the departments: air quality, waste management, and water quality. These are just general FYI. You know, anybody who wants to can have access to the Water Health Portal. It's got a lot of data on it. It's fairly user-friendly, but we want the public to be able to get as much information as they can. The public interest is on the rise, which I think is a good thing. Another thing that we've been really sort of promoting is what's called area-wide optimization, and that's sort of an EPA program where, you know, in certain cases, a water utility may take steps to go above and beyond in their treatment technology and their operational technology to further increase the quality of water that they produce. You know, a lot of times and I understand it's a matter of satisfaction to say that we produce really high quality water here at our particular water treatment facility. But last year we had 43 water systems that received awards for voluntarily meeting higher standards under EPA's area-wide optimization. That's part of the plan. It's being implemented by the water treatment folks themselves. And so I always try to think of this as just like continuous improvement. And this is an area where there's continuous improvement in the water quality that our citizens consume. I did mention the Kentucky Infrastructure Authority. You know, every water and sewer line in the state is mapped, and it's available on GIS. And that's entered in the system by area development districts. And so when it comes time to determine if a municipality, whether it's water or wastewater, is asking for a grant, you know, what is their current infrastructure? What's the condition of it? This is a little bit of an aside, but I can tell you the infrastructure, and we'll talk about it a little bit more in a minute, the infrastructure challenge is daunting. You know, when you think that in some cases, ratepayers pay money and a municipality treats water, and by the time it exits that plant to get where it's going, there's tremendous losses of water. I've seen water losses in some systems in Kentucky as high as 70%. So obviously that's not very efficient, but that's a challenge that we have in a lot of places, and it's hard to overcome. You know, a small utility can try to piecemeal it, find this leak here, that hole there, but at some point in time, it's just hard to sustain that and the reality that you're paying to have water treated that's then being almost immediately discharged into the ground before it ever gets to the customer. It's just hard to make ends meet under those circumstances, but it's a reality that we all have to deal with and try to figure out ways to improve it. Kentucky does lead the nation in effective regionalization. You know, regionalization is where you might have two or more water systems that reach the conclusion that it might make more sense to join hands together, especially, let's say, if one of them is struggling, or let's say one small system. I'm not going to I can give you an example right now, but I'll keep it very generic, where you have a small water system that their intake is declining, so the feature they use to draw their raw water in is in a state of disrepair, and their water treatment plant is in a state of disrepair, and to the tune of, let's say, maybe $50 million to get a new intake in a water treatment plant. Then you compare that to the debt service that ratepayers might accrue as a result of that, and it's not insignificant. Now, at the same time, you may have an opportunity with a bigger system in the not too distant away that perhaps you could work on agreements, whether administrative or physical agreements, where you can begin to sort of tie those water treatment plants and delivery systems together. And there has been a fair amount of that in Kentucky, especially in the last 4 or 5 years. I think I may have a slide here in a second. It's not always achievable. Sometimes you might have physical barriers in the way where you can't connect to somebody that's relatively close to you. Another issue is, on a local level, drinking water is a source of revenue, and it's a very important source of revenue, and sometimes there's concern about giving that source of revenue up. One thing I would say about water and wastewater You know, water is a source of revenue and wastewater just cost. That's why oftentimes you'll see more effort put into the water system than the wastewater system. That's just some of the realities that we deal with, but that's certainly a true talking point. Yeah, that next slide, you can see that in 2000, we had 950 public water systems, and now we have 427 public water systems. And I have to tell you, that's a good thing, because ultimately what's probably going to occur as a result of that is capacity and water quality issues are likely to be better. There may be cost with the regionalizing, but ultimately at some point that cost is spread out over a higher number of ratepayers, which you do the simple math, that makes it a little better for everyone involved. So we do encourage it where it's available. Sometimes there's just local disagreements about these kinds of things, and we try to help folks work through those. But we're going to continue to emphasize that, point out where it's an opportunity to be more efficient and perhaps improve water quality and ratepayer cost. The fact of the matter is, if I'm a small system sitting out there at some point, the condition of my system is going to force me to do something. I've got to get to the point to where I've got to be able to produce capacity and water to meet the needs of my customers, and at some point that's going to become more increasingly difficult to do. So, Amanda, I think you want to talk a little bit about our water wastewater operator training programs.
Hold 1 second? We have some questions that may apply just to you, if that's okay.
Oh, absolutely.
Mr. Hatton. First of all, so the state can be a resource for these many different water districts out there if necessary. Can they or can they not? Or is it too massive?
Well, there are resources in several ways. We regulate them, which might not be perceived as a resource, but in some ways, I think in a lot of ways, it's better to work with us than it would be to work with federal EPA. That's a resource, because a lot of what we do in the regulatory scheme is we try to offer compliance assistance. We really honestly do. And we have some of our, Kentucky Rural Waters here as well. We work together with them a lot, and Joe knows more about this. He's forgotten more about it than I know, but we do provide a lot of compliance assistance that help that way. Sometimes when we have available funding, like recently we had federal funding for emerging contaminants, and we used some of that federal funding up in the city of South Shore. South Shore was on public supply wells. Not sure why yet, but those public supply wells had considerable levels of PFAS in them that they couldn't treat. I mean, significant levels of PFAS. So we were able to use, money that we had directly to help them solve that problem and get better drinking water. And that's a very expensive, I'll be honest with you, that's a very expensive endeavor. South Shore is a small town. All of our citizens are important. When you look at the economy of scale, that's a $16 million project to run a water line under the Ohio River from Portsmouth to get them some safe drinking water. So there are opportunities where we have funds that we put out. Like I said, we certainly do work with KIA to try to get the funding out where we know it's absolutely needed, a legitimate project, and prioritize those projects that we have. So,
Okay. All right.
I don't know if I answered your question or not, Mr. McCoy.
Well, it does, but
Yeah.
there's probably still more that we can do if you got the resources to do it with, I'm sure, if you got chemical engineers and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah, we do.
But I'm going to stop for myself. We have some questions from her. First one I'd like to ask, the Representative Blanton has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to lay out a scenario before I ask, and I have two questions, if I may. And I'll try to be brief because I could take up this whole meeting with what I'm about to touch on, Commissioner.
Yes,
you
sir.
may have an inclination of what I'm about to touch on. I don't know. We have a situation in my hometown in the city. Mm-hmm. From the mayor's own admission, he can only account for 30% of his water meters, losing, he says, in excess of $50,000 a month in revenues, probably closer to $100,000. We literally have in our plaza a stream of water running across the plaza right now because of a water leak that cannot be addressed. They do not have the staff. People's quitting. The sewer system, he's had a company came in to the treatment center. They've looked over things. They're literally sending out a man who generally reads meters with a 100-gallon tank and pumping grinder pumps at people's homes to try to keep up with things. They're short hundreds of grinders right now. They have pieces of equipment within the treatment facility that's not working, which tells me that I question the discharge of the water that's going back out in the streams is being cleaned to the specifications it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
They're literally charging a base rate for water because they don't know how much water anybody's using. And I'm baffled because where's control? The city taking it away from the water treatment or the water board, and now the city council is running it. It's no pun at Martin County, and my friends here from Martin County, but it's Martin County 2.0. It's lack of leadership. It's lack of taking care of problems. This didn't happen overnight. So my question is, are you all the ones that does inspections on these facilities, and what do those inspections entail?
We do inspections on the treatment facilities, like if it's a water treatment plant. We do inspections like if it's a wastewater treatment plant. We don't do inspections as to whether or not people have a working meter or have a meter at all. If we were to look into, because this is more of a statewide problem, if I was to go up to the Division of Enforcement and ask them, what is the majority of water-related cases you have right now? And the majority of those would be wastewater, discharges to surface waters of the state that are non-standard discharges. So that is an across-the-board problem. The problem is you can go to enforcement all you want to, but if somebody doesn't have the money to comply, they don't have the money to comply, and that's a lot of what happens. But we don't get into the delivery systems. We're not authorized by law to do that, but we do know that what you're describing is actually, yeah, absolutely.
So I've got constituents who has sewer coming up in their yard from the grinders, up in their houses because of backup. And I understand what good does it do to fine if they can't pay because they can't.
Right.
I get that. But at what point, and is there an avenue when things are getting this bad? Because we're on the verge of losing water. And this city water system also provides water to our county system, which means an entire county could be without water. I mean, we're driving into a brick wall, and we're ready to hit it wide open. What does it take? Is it possible because of such mismanagement, because of such problems, can the state come in and take over this operation, get this thing straightened out before an entire county loses access to water and sewer?
Well, the state's big. It's beyond the Department for Environmental Protection. So that I couldn't answer that question as to whether or not the state has the authority to do that. I know there have been instances where the state has suggested that third parties come in and help water systems manage their way through a process like that that's a lot more transparent and visible, and looking at everything like, does everybody have a working water meter? What are we going to do to try to fix our amount of water loss and those kinds of things? At the end of the day, if a water capacity or availability emergency is higher than a wastewater problem, we have that going on right now. We all recognize that if you get to the point to where you may not be able to provide water, then I think you're in a position to talk about something, and perhaps I'm just going to go ahead and say it, something maybe edging up to being an emergency.
We're beyond emergency.
I know that recently there have been some issues that sound a little bit like what you're talking about, Representative Blanton, where municipalities have gone to the Infrastructure Authority and said, we have an emergency situation here that needs something fixed very quickly.
I'm not so sure they're willing to declare themselves an emergency.
Yeah.
But I'm saying it is, having spoken with the company that came in and did a review of everything.
Yep.
My concern is for my constituents, and I get they got to have money,
Yeah.
but what good is throwing money at a problem if they don't know how to fix it? They might put a Band-Aid on it, but it's going to come right back.
Yeah.
It's going to keep happening. We're going to keep throwing money at it. So at what point, and I'm all about local control, but when local control is going to do detrimental harm to its constituents,
Yeah.
somebody with the know-how is going to have to step in and say enough's enough. And this is not the last we're going to hear about the problem in the Sayersville City Water District. I
absolutely.
promise you it's not.
Yeah.
And I promise you it's going to get worse, and it's going to get worse.
Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
You're welcome. Okay, we have Senator Hickman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a comment. Commissioner, worked with you on several projects, and I appreciate you're always accessible and always try to find a solution. And I guess I'd have to comment Barry Mayfield, too. He's the probably one of the most responsive people in state government. You call him, and right away he's back at it. So thank you both, and just again appreciate your accessibility.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Senator Higdon.
Okay, thank you. And we have Senator Smith.
Yes, I have some comments and then a question at the end, if I may, Mr. Chairman. Representative Blanton brings up a good point, and Commissioner Haddon, good to see you. It's unusual not to see you in front of my committee, so it's refreshing to see you over here in Veterans. But as always, it's good to see you and your team. Some years ago, in the 90s, when I was a commissioner and got to wear that moniker, we had this issue with VICO.
Yeah.
And also with Hazard, and we had line loss greater than what they were taking in. Of course, they were buying it from Hazard, and it got compounded. But I remember being almost in this exact situation, and I think that's what VICO was hoping at the time, that the state would come in and take them over. And what we were told on the ground with the doors shut was that the state's not coming in here to take this over, because the fines are sometimes $50,000-$60,000 and per day or week, and they just aren't going to do that. So we had to back up and punt from a different place on the field, which they did. They were able to get some money. We did the line test where we actually smoked all the lines and found out that it was coming out of the old Star building. It was right there next to City Hall. So huge, I think it was an 8-inch main that was going. So no matter how much water we were putting in, we were losing. So it's a tough battle. I understand the frustrations, and it is something that Representative Blanton and I may have to go back home and work on from that side up to get it to the right people. But money won't fix the problem, but there are some things out there that we can leverage, and I'm glad I'm not called commissioner anymore. We'll let you guys carry that. But my question that I had was, PFAS is something that's going to come at us quick. It's going to come at us fast. It's going to be very expensive. It's going to affect not only the businesses in the state of Kentucky, but also our cities and municipalities. Now, we filed a bill I had last year, which we carried, and I think I got almost every vote in this room to make sure that we were able to put some framework in to see what the federal government was going to do. The federal government has to get this one right, because if they don't, this will hit you at home, because it's going to hit your landfills. And then when your cities can no longer, you know what I'm talking about, because we've had this, we battled this. Once it hits there, it spreads out to every one of you. So it takes a situation that could be already expensive and exacerbates that to a standstill, which we've never seen before. So I do hope that the federal government comes back with something that's very responsive and we have some input in, because it may be the biggest issue any of us deal with in this capacity in our lifetime. PFAS is something that's slippery. It's hard to get your hands on. Matter of fact, you can't treat it as it is. We have to make it something else. We have to carbonize it to create something else so we can actually capture it. So it's going to be a big, expensive ticket. So I was very glad to hear you say that. And of course, as chairman of Natural Resources, we will be working in tandem with you all for some of the solutions once we see what the federal government puts out. Right. But my question, if I may, Mr. Chairman, to come back through the chair, if I may have a follow-up question.
Very briefly, we got three more people.
I just want to say, in the floods that we've had, we're all concerned about having our streams cleaned out. I mean, if you have gutters on your house and they get filled with leaves, you go clean them out so they work. The same principle applies to these streams. We're having flooding. back to back. Our communities are losing faith in us at the fact that why rebuild? We've been hit twice. The streams are just as full as they were before. And just quickly, if you could, is there a plan underfoot to help us address this so we can give our businesses confidence along these rivers that we do have some sort of interactive plan available for them to give them some confidence in reinvesting back in these small towns? Thank you.
So, post 22, after those significant floods happened over in eastern Kentucky, the very first thing we did as an agency, because we deal with issues related to hazardous waste, there were a lot of propane tanks and things like that in the streams, and I was concerned that somebody was going to start mucking around and get blown up. So, and some containers and other things that are not just a piece of household trash. So we spent about 4 months marshaling all that stuff up and moving it off. And then you get over to the solid waste side of it, just got odds and ends of everything. At some point, we had to sort of center on making sure the waterway was open, and by leaving it in that condition, it wouldn't exacerbate the next rain event. Actually going in and doing, wholesale removal of debris from a stream it's a good thought. The problem is sometimes as fast as you're removing it, somebody's putting it back in again. But I can't honestly say that I can see a situation of where there's funding and resources to go pick up everything that's in a stream. Like I said, if we have a significant weather event like that, first we look at, is there hazardous waste there? Is there containerized waste? We've got to get that out because we don't want that, leaking into a source water 2 miles from the uptake for the drinking water facility. I'm not sure I answered your question, Senator Smith, but I think that's about the long and the short of it.
Thank you. We got 3 more people, and then we'll go to Amanda, if that's okay, I think.
Absolutely.
Representative Dawson, very brief, please, your question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I will be brief. I have a question and a quick comment. Commissioner, is there anything legislatively we need to have in place that would either encourage or facilitate the combinations of regionalization of water districts here within our counties where we're combining these together? Is there anything in particular we need to do legislatively that might help toward that goal?
I think that in order to make it more efficient, effective, and likely to happen, there may need to be some type of legislative action. We can encourage it, and I'm not suggesting you do or you don't. I'm just stating the facts. We can encourage it, and we get on down to some of these slides here a little bit later on. You see what our debt is if we were to fix our problem from start to finish, and it's staggering. And if the legislature were to do that, we'd certainly like to be part of that conversation. But when you start getting into things like managing your assets, if I spend a bunch of money on equipment, I don't operate and maintain it because I don't have money. Ultimately, assets and rates, though, are something that's the difficult thing to navigate. Because while there may be a fair number of water treatment systems you could talk to, say, that's the best thing we ever did. There may be some that say, I'm not interested in that at all. And so that's where things start to get a little ticklish, I would imagine, from your all's perspective. But certainly, if there were requirements to at least further evaluate the potential of regionalization before you just go to KIA and say, I want X numbers of tens of millions of dollars to fix my water treatment plant, that would certainly be a step forward. There's no question about that.
Sorry, we got 2 more. And we got 3 more presentations.
Commissioner, I would really appreciate having a conversation with you here in the near future on
Absolutely.
this right here, please.
Absolutely.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Okay, Representative Bratcher.
Thank you, Commissioner, for coming in today. I'm very familiar with what you're talking about, being responsible for a wastewater treatment facility at a major distillery.
Yep.
So it is what is alarming to me, and I have to support Representative Blanton's comments, is that when we have infrastructure that's not providing clean drinking water to the local area, and then you've got a sewer problem where you've got sewer coming up in people's backyards and basements. This is a serious health and safety risk for the entire community, and I would think, including part of a whole portion of the state. So my concern is, at what point, and I guess my question, at what point does the state get involved and help on these situations? And we get involved in natural disasters. If there was a flood, we would be there. If there's a tornado, we would be there. But in this situation, which is probably could be even more systemic, we're not having the state respond?
Well, the state, its authority only goes so far, and its ability to help fund something only goes so far. This is as much as anything. I know there might not be everybody that agrees on this issue here, but there is a funding challenge here. It's simple enough to point out I got a problem. What do we do in a situation where we have sewage coming up in someone's yard? We can't cut the sewer treatment plant off. We can't stop generating that waste. I understand your question. It's legitimate. It is a health issue, especially with pathogens and things like that are in wastewater and other things along with it. But until there is some significant authority for someone to come in and say, you have to stop this now, or you have to stop what you're doing, or figure out a way to fix the problem long term, it's going to continue to happen. It's happening all across the country. And I realize it's a very unsatisfactory answer, but I think that's just the truth of it, sir.
Well, I appreciate your honesty, but I have to disagree with you on the funding mechanism. We've not funded something that was serious like this before.
Thank you. Senator, and the last one for this one, Senator Deneen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Commissioner, for being here.
Yep.
I want to circle back to the regionalization
Yes, sir.
that you mentioned earlier, and I do want to thank Representative Dotson. He's correct on some of his comments there. I want to talk to you a little bit about the regionalization efforts. In our growing communities in Kentucky, we have a huge need for infrastructure funding, and I want to stress that to all my colleagues. We just have a huge need, and the need is when you deal with regionalization, you have, for example, in my area in Hardin County, we have partnered with Louisville Water, and moving a lot of people into an area for a workforce explosion of jobs and development. It's critical that we start to really take a hard look at the size of the pipes that connect to these regional areas like Louisville Water. And so I want to stress that we can't move certain numbers of gallons of water. We're limited by the size of these pipes that are coming into our rural communities. And so if we're going to really address this explosion of workforce development and expanding our tax base and our population, in my opinion, this is the critical piece. Mm-hmm. You cannot move people in without moving water and sewer.
Right.
That it is. If I've heard all about the talk about where all the gold is in Fort Knox, and the gold is in our water and sewer lines along their easements. Absolutely. And we have to, as a General Assembly, we have to address this issue if we're going to continue to grow. So my question is this: as Kentucky's economic growth continues, what's your assessment of the need going forward? Are there particular hot spots that you are focused on right now as you work with development districts like LTAD and others across the state? Are there a few of them front of mind that we can focus on as a General Assembly going into this budget cycle?
Well, as you mentioned, the Reach Louisville Water Company, I visited one of their facilities the other day. They have the capacity to treat 150 million gallons a day. So that certainly makes them a good candidate for more regionalization. And I think they mentioned to me at one point that they expect in the not too distant future to be providing water to 23% of the population of the state at some point. So it's pretty significant. Where you have what I would consider mid-sized cities that have money and a base to pay, that those are what I would consider hot spots for potential regionalization opportunities, although it can happen at any scale. The example I gave a few minutes ago is in a part of the state where none of those cities are particularly large, but if they were to band together, their outcome would be much better. So good drinking water is the primary thing. Areas where you're seeing, as you said, economic development happening. that development won't happen if there's not available water. It just won't, because a lot of the folks coming in, they need a certain capacity of water to do their business. And then lastly, you know, that question about sizing your pipes right, that's something that's better achieved if you're proactively planning basing on regionalization. One of the challenges might be if I connect to someone else, let's say, because I'm not always already going to have the pipes in the ground. Let's say in some cases I may, but the pipes are small, and therefore I can't push a sufficient amount of water through a 4-inch pipe. I need an 8, 10, 12-inch pipe. So regionalization has its cost associated with it. There might need to be infrastructure built and installed, but in the end, it's a much better overall solution, I believe. So, people are doing it because it works, and you saw the numbers. We've decreased the number of water systems we have by 50% in the last 25 years. And a lot of that is just by necessity and people saying, we absolutely need to do this. We got a lot of water in the state, a lot of capacity. We just need to be good stewards of it and spend our money the best way we can and our resources the best way we can.
Thank you all for your questions, and certainly thank you. You may have a few more points you want to make. Very lively discussion. Yeah. Appreciate that. Learning a lot at the same time, at least I am. I think we're going to talk about some training now. One of the things that's important to my area as well, or my interest, I guess, is not only do we have infrastructure issues, we also make sure that the people who do the work are certified. Certification means something. It means you've met some level, and these tests are not easy. I've seen them, and I'm not one. You don't want me doing it, but they're there for a reason. So I wonder if there are some of the areas that we're having some difficulty. Are we also having difficulty in people who are certified doing it? Because anybody can run a line, but to run a line properly,
Right.
to get the flow properly, is a different story. So,
Right.
okay, and then we probably got about 10 minutes, if that's okay, because we got 3 more groups we're going to bring up, and we may even come back at another date to have further conversation. So.
Good
Thank
deal.
you for your time.
Well, I'll try to keep it brief here just on the operator certification front. And of course, you really can't talk about your infrastructure if you're not talking about the people who work in it. Our certified drinking water and wastewater operators. They're the front line of public health. Whether you're recreating in water or drinking water, they keep you safe. So, our certification program works to make sure that people meet the qualifications of each of our 13 licensures, to make sure that they have the experience and the knowledge to operate systems, that baseline. Doesn't mean they, can't learn more and be better operators later on, but it's just the baseline knowledge needed to operate a facility. So when we get an application in, we look at all the person's work experience, we look at their education, or a combination thereof, and decide if they're, if they're good to take a test. And of course, after we approve them to take a test, we do have 2 testing events a month usually, they can take one of our certification training program or classes that help them prep for that exam. We provide those through our certified training providers like Rural Water and QOA. So we try to help our operators get a leg up on that training. So learning what's basically needed to not only operate your plant, but also what your requirements are for notifying of boil water advisories and those basics of management. And these are only a few day classes, so it's hard to get all of that in there. But they take their tests, and hopefully they pass and they become certified operators. And over the next 2 years, they have to get CEUs in order to maintain that license, and they renew every 2 years. So between the basics of our certification program, along with continuing education, we hope that they get exposed to all the different aspects of drinking water and wastewater treatment. We try to hit topics that are problem areas. So if we see something in enforcement, we can ramp up our CEUs to help provide information and education on how to avoid those issues. So we try to tailor some of our CEUs. Our certification is our certification, but our CEUs are where we have the opportunity to sort of address some of those issues where we might see they might need to know about PFAS and how we go about treating PFAS, or they may need to know how do you do a boil water advisory, or how do you operate around a failing package treatment plant. So those are where we have those opportunities to provide those extra curriculum type of activities. I will say that, in 2024, of course, we worked with you on House Bill 40. So that gave us an opportunity to solve another crisis we're having along with our infrastructure crisis, and that's our lack of certified operators. Just like every other profession, we're hitting that, what they call the silver tsunami, where a lot of us are retiring. So we're seeing a lot of that knowledge walk away, and that's causing issues for our facilities across the state. Because if you have poor infrastructure, you need a good operator to operate around it. So House Bill 40, and I'm just going to give you a little bit of update. Of course, we merged our drinking water and wastewater certification boards, and that is a streamlining effort, and we appreciate that. We also explored voluntary certification for supervisors. Turns out extra certification tests are not popular, but they still want the information. So we're working with the Kentucky Rural Water. They actually have a supervisory training program existing. So we're evaluating their curriculum along with some EPA curriculum and coming up with a voluntary accreditation program so operators can learn some of those management skills. And in those management skills is that facility management where you assess, what you need for your facility long term. So those management skills that might be lacking at this point that are critical in decision making in the future. So we're working on that. We're also we looked into shared services certification program. Turns out people, and this had to do with lack of operators. So turns out the preferred mechanism there was to have a list of contract operators that's readily updated. So if you're having a shortage at your facility, you can look at that register and identify someone who might be able to help you out in terms of an operator shortage. And of course, recruiting and getting people into the workforce is always the big lift, because most people don't even know that this is an avenue that you can go into. Every operator I've ever talked to said, I got into this career because I knew somebody, So we are working with our partner organizations like Rural Water, QOA, and our Operator Recruitment and Development Committee, along with our board, to do a toolkit for recruitment. So they can personalize it. They can go out to job fairs, just like we can too. We just want to make sure that we have tools so people learn the importance of water and the importance of these careers in water. So we're working hard on all of those things. They're all very, very important. So we appreciate the interest in our operators. It's something you get very, very passionate about, because these are the people that protect you on a daily basis.
Thank you. And I will say I have looked at your training just from a far view, and very impressive, the process that's available there. My only concern is everybody taking advantage of that? That's my concern. Are they doing that? Are they not? There's not a mandate, I don't think, that they have to do that, which makes me a little concerned, because this could be a health issue as well. So
Right.
Appreciate the training. I think we have Representative Johnson has a question.
Yeah, very quickly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I may have missed this, and if I did, I apologize. But what is the level of education that you need to become an operator?
So we generally GED. But, of course, we have people from GED to PhD in water. I will say that, if they do have advanced education, we do substitute that in licensure. So you can get, we substitute for experience. So, but in general, we need someone with a GED.
Okay, and then as a career advancement, you'd be looking for undergraduate or postgraduate masters or something like that. Is that part of the program, or is that just something that would be nice?
That's just something that would be nice. We have 13 different licensures, depending on what size plant, you can license up to a class 4 operator. So, in terms of advancement, years of experience or combined education can allow you to certify at next levels. And of course, if you take advantage of supervisory training, hopefully you can move up in your water systems. But I will say, career path and pay for operators is a huge deal in terms of getting people into the profession, and as well as staying in the profession and moving up. So while we have those different classes of operations, operator licensure that you can go into, those, just like you can't afford to repair infrastructure, it's hard for a lot of our communities to pay operators when they can go work at McDonald's and have less responsibility. It's hard. It's very difficult.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And just to make sure I understand, to clarify too, no matter if they come in with a GED or high school or baccalaureate, master's, or PhD, in order to get those certifications, they still have to step before a testing process and be tested.
Correct.
And show and demonstrate that they have that knowledge base.
Yes, they have
So
to have
it's it's a very rigid, I guess. It's a very tough test.
Yes.
So
yes, I mean, and you have to have that combination of experience and knowledge. So.
Okay. Sorry, Senator Yates has a question. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate it, and I really appreciate this presentation. It shows that the public safety aspect of this is kind of all wrapped up together. And you touched on, as far as drawing in people to fill those positions. And in 2005 in Louisville is when we had the federal consent decree that came in, and that was under George W. Bush, starting to enforce some of the Clean Water Act and what was done. But what we learned in there is that we had really unsafe levels of sewage overflow. It was dramatically affecting our constituents, similar to what you're hearing today. And now you're seeing that how we're kind of leaders in that, because it was $1.15 billion, a consent decree, which was, as a constituent then in there, and it was really hard on our people to pay that 6% increase every single year.
Mm-hmm.
But part of that cost, and that's why I thought it was important to yours, is that they had to dramatically increase what they were paying people to make sure you had the best and brightest come in for these, because the infrastructure in which you have in communities is probably one of the most basic and important things we could possibly do, because everything else is built on it. And people can't live or choose to live and work in an area that doesn't have, and we're talking about public safety here, the most basic resources. So I know that was a heck of an expense for Metro government. Metro Louisville, it was before the merger, but it's something that I worked through. And but that was the Clean Water Act, and so the EPA and then MSD worked together, and they came to that part agreement. But part of that was the wages had to be dramatically increased, but that infrastructure had to be put in place. And so I just wanted to, when we're talking about what worked and what didn't, we don't want to forget what that price tag is as well. It's monster.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, have you got any final comments or anything? We don't have any other questions at this time, but
I just had one clarification. I want
Yes.
to make sure when I made the statement about triaging between water and wastewater, I certainly didn't mean to indicate that sewer coming up in a residential area is not a problem. If you look at the situation we were talking about, Representative Blanton, where you had the choice between treating wastewater and not discharging wastewater, or treating water and not discharging wastewater into a stream, that's specifically what I was talking about, because we have places right now where untreated wastewater is being discharged to the surface waters. That's not a good situation. That's a little different than it coming up where you're actually having a direct exposure. So I want to make sure that people didn't think that I was downsizing the critical nature of that, because I certainly didn't mean to if it was taken that way.
well, thank you for that clarification, and thank you all today for coming forth and sharing a great deal of knowledge with us. So this may lead into something else, but thank you very much and appreciate your time.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
Representative McCool.
We'd like to have the next presenter from the Kentucky Rural Water Association come forward. Please introduce yourself and begin your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Certainly a pleasure to be here and have the opportunity to be here with you. And I'm going to try my best here to get this presentation up. And excellent. In the essence of time, I know that I have a lot of information that I would like to cover, and I want to make sure that I do that expeditiously. And I need my glasses. Perfect. So this morning I'd like to briefly do two things. I would like to discuss the Kentucky Rural Water Association, who we are, how we're governed, and what vital services, support services that we provide to water and wastewater utilities across the Commonwealth. And then I'd also like to compound, I think the Commissioner and Deputy Commissioner did a very good job in addressing a lot of the challenges and some of the issues and statistics that are out there. I don't want to replicate those, but I do want to touch on some of those, and I'll try to do that quickly. So the Kentucky Rural Water Association is a statewide boots-on-the-ground trade association with an active membership of 355 utilities. That accounts for 98% of all Kentucky's water and wastewater utilities, along with more than 240 industry stakeholders and associate members. And it's our mission to help water and wastewater utilities help themselves. This is just this graph just shows you, out of those 355 utility members, the organizational structure by which they operate. And when it comes to governance of the association was formed 46 years ago by a core group of utility leaders and industry stakeholders, with the mission or the vision to have a working membership and a working board of directors. And I'm pleased to announce that under our current slate of board of directors, that vision is still alive. They are working members of the utility world, of the water and wastewater utility world. Most of them are managers, some others are stakeholders. And I have the privilege of working alongside roughly 30 of the best and brightest individuals in our industry that make up our rural water team. And they make my life easy, and they do an outstanding service to the utilities that we serve. Three main areas of focus for the association, which is technical assistance, professional development and training, and of course regulatory and legislative advocacy. And this is just a snapshot. I kind of picked out some of the core things that we do. There's just not enough time to touch on every single thing or the footprint that our association has across the state and what we do for utilities. And for some of you all that I've talked to in previous conversations, I think one of the biggest that sticks out is that anytime that we have a natural disaster or an emergency, rural water is typically instrumental in coming in and assisting those local utilities in the recovery efforts and restoration efforts of getting things back up and running in an expeditious manner. We have a wide array within that staff that you just seen. We have a wide array of very specific individuals, ranging from circuit riders to wastewater technicians to energy efficiency specialists, source water protection specialists. We have individuals that are diverse in water and wastewater treatment to come in and help utilities from an optimization standpoint. Leak detection, which we talked about is a big thing, GIS, and I'll touch on that in just a second. Rate analyst, rates is a big thing, and then when you get into professional development and training, we'll talk about some of these things in just a minute. Because what I'd really like to do is talk about, just pick out just a couple of the varying programs. One being our compliance assistance program. This is the 15th year for this program. We have 209 utility system participants, and that represents roughly 62% of all the water utilities in the state of Kentucky participate in our compliance assistance program. And you say, well, why is that important? Just by having the magnitude of the compliance specialists that we have to help these systems not just stay in compliance, but help them with regular things like testing protocols and distribution issues and all the things that I think some of the things that's been discussed here previously. Just in our current program year, we have an estimated savings of nearly $1.3 million to the utilities that we serve. And over the life of the program, we've had a savings that we think accumulate to over $12 million. That's a direct result back to the utilities and back to the ratepayers. Another major component of what we do is our geographic information system and our asset management program. And I want to use this as an example. This program came about as a direct or is directly attributed to our exceptional working relationship with the Kentucky Energy and Environment Cabinet's Division of Water and the Kentucky Department for Local Government and the respective funding agencies of US EPA and the Appalachian Regional Commission. Through that cooperative effort, we've been able to, in very recent years, equip 121 utilities across the Commonwealth with some form of a geographic information system. And that transcends into then using that data, that mapping, that asset inventory to come in and develop an asset management program, which will be very instrumental when we look at the challenges facing Kentucky and how those utilities individually will come in and combat those challenges when we get into capital improvement planning. And one of the estimates of this program is that we think that we've saved these utilities by having that consortium and that concerted effort, group effort, working on the same dashboards, the same platform, the same standardization across the state. You know, we've saved utilities almost $900,000 by doing that. Another program that I want to touch on is just our registered apprenticeship program. We currently have 25 active apprentices in that program. Since the program's inception, which was in the fall of 2019, we've had 31 graduates. We've got 19 participating utility employers. And one thing to note about the apprenticeship program, with it being registered, we provide on-the-job training for water and wastewater operator certification. And that's a 2-year process, 4 semesters. That's 4,000 hours of on-the-job training and 288 hours of related technical instruction. This has been very instrumental in what the Deputy Commissioner discussed in the operator certification pathway of getting some of these individuals that want to become certified operators quicker. The only problem that we have with this program is we have 25 active apprentices. I'd like to see that next year be 125. And then the next year I'd like to see that be 225, where we could scale that and backfill. And we'll talk about workforce development in just a second and it being one of the challenges. But we've got some major barriers there that we've got to figure out ways to make it more attractive and incentivize people to enter into this pathway. Deputy Commissioner also talked about House Bill 40, Chairman McCool, and the work that's going on there and the discussion that we've had with the Division of Compliance Assistance. Rural Water has a Utility Management Institute. It's a utility management professional program that was created back in 1999. And through the inception of this program, we've had over 863 student participants. That represents 208 utilities, and we've had 593 utility management professional graduates through this program. I had the opportunity to go through this program back in 2006 as a new utility manager. And so this is a very comprehensive management-driven, management-focused training program specifically for utility managers and key personnel in that role. And we're very excited about the opportunity of evaluating the curriculum within this program and incorporating that into the requirements of House Bill 40 and having some type of certification pathway associated for utility managers moving forward. So when we talk about challenges facing Kentucky water systems, I think it's important to, and I'm going to reiterate some of the statistics that the Commissioner just gave out of the 427 public water systems. Those are managed by roughly 330 public water utilities across the state. And when we look at the average age of Kentucky's infrastructure, and these statistics are important because we'll follow this up in just a second, but the average age of a water treatment plant in Kentucky is currently 44 years. And when we look at something as simple as a water storage tank, it's 32 years. And this statistic is pretty eye-opening for our industry. 27% of Kentucky's water distribution lines are over 50 years old. So we're talking about assets that are in current use that have met or exceeded their useful life. And this statistic, I think, is very telling in that 78% of all of our public water systems in Kentucky serve a population of less than 10,000 people. And so you can see the demographic or the dynamic there that these smaller systems serve the majority, not of the population, but the majority of the public water systems that are out there. And the Commissioner made reference to, 97% of Kentuckians have access to public water. And I think, from a state perspective and what I see with other state rural water associations, Kentucky is a leader in this area. To compound Senator Deneen's comments about capacity, I think it's important that we always keep in the perspective that just because water is available or accessible, it doesn't always mean that we have the capacity to support other functions like economic development, industrial, commercial, and residential growth. So we have to be mindful of that, and that goes back into the issues of where are we from a capital improvement planning or asset management standpoint of looking to the future. Also going to compound on the comments of about consolidation of Kentucky systems. Now I'm going to expand that footprint and look at the past 50 years, because what we've seen is an 80% reduction in the number of water systems in Kentucky. And it's very important to note that Kentucky is one of the, or if not the leading state in the country when it comes to consolidation of public water systems. So what challenges face Kentucky's water systems? I would sum them up in these four major categories. And I'm going to go through this information pretty quickly. I'll be happy to answer any questions or dive deeper into specific areas. But I could literally spend the next 6 or 7 or 8 hours just talking about the challenges facing our industry and the needs associated with those challenges. But I would classify the major challenges as aging and inadequate infrastructure, regulatory compliance, funding and financial constraints, and lack of technical expertise and workforce. So I'll go through this pretty quickly. Feel free to ask any questions that may come up as we go through this. Aging infrastructure, the results of aging infrastructure I think are pretty straightforward. With that infrastructure, we have a higher rate of deterioration of that infrastructure. That gets into the reliability and the service interruptions associated with an aging infrastructure. And then just the sheer financial constraints and economic impact that has not only on the utility and the local community, but the ratepayer. Because it's expensive to go out and either respond in an emergency fashion to some type of failure relating to aging or inadequate infrastructure, or it's also expensive to just plan capital improvement projects moving forward. And we'll talk about the funding needs. But the major impact of that is the deterrent that an aging or inadequate infrastructure has toward economic growth for the Commonwealth. And, it's not all gloom and doom. Kentucky has leveraged itself very well in the resources of water and wastewater, and those are assets to this Commonwealth and assets that we can use to fuel things like economic development, industrial growth, and all the things associated with that. One of the things that I'll point out is in that the most recent infrastructure needs and survey assessment that was put out by US EPA, they estimated our 20-year infrastructure needs for drinking water at a little bit over $7.8 billion. And the clean water or wastewater needs is roughly about $7.5 million. That's over a 20-year period. But when you look at that collectively, that would be a $766 million per year investment over the next 20 years. It's pretty substantial when we talk about those needs. And personally, from what I see in dealing with our utility systems every day, day in and day out, I think that those figures are not big, are not high enough. I hate to say that, but I really do. Regulatory compliance is also a major challenge facing Kentucky water systems. You say, well, how is regulatory compliance? Just the sheer complexity now of the regulations that are in the pipeline coming down, or the new regulations, or the new emerging contaminants that are out there. And I don't want to get it. We could spend the whole afternoon just talking about new regulations, new emerging contaminants. But it's going to take a specialized skill set, a specialized workforce that has the expertise to handle the complexity of these regulations. And it's also going to take additional technical assistance to help these utilities navigate that. And then from a capital improvement standpoint, as new things emerge, whether it's a contaminant, it's a new regulation, It's going to require a modification of the way we operate our distribution systems, the way we operate our treatment plants and the capacities that are with those. And it's going to require significant investment in basically new technologies and methods to accommodate that regulatory compliance. From a funding and financial constraint standpoint, we talked a lot about some of the challenge or the problems earlier, but facing some of these utilities, and that's a compounding problem. So from financial sustainability, we get into just some utilities having the inability to even qualify for certain funding opportunities that are out there. And then when we talk about capital, I think we also need to talk about non-capital funding opportunities, because it's become very prevalent in recent years that some systems out there do not have the managerial or financial capacity to either apply for certain funding opportunities or to qualify for certain funding opportunities. And so what we found is that the traditional funding avenues for brick and mortar projects may not necessarily be what the immediate need of a utility is. It may be more of a non-capital need first, so that a utility can get its managerial capacity up to where it needs to be, or it can eliminate some of the debt associated with the utility so that it can be more financially viable to qualify for certain funding opportunities. Or it may be something as simple that I can't apply for conventional SRF funding because our municipality hadn't conducted audits for the last 3 or 4 years. So there's definitely a need for non-traditional, non-capital funding opportunities to assist some of these systems to make them more financially sustainable and viable for the traditional funding opportunities that are out there. Technical expertise and workforce. We just talked about the operator certification pathway. And, one of the things that we see day in and day out is the limited availability of qualified personnel in our industry, the lack of effective recruitment strategies for the water industry, and the lack of succession planning in the water industry. And let's do this. So I think this can best be summed up in a recent Kentucky Water Workforce Survey that was put out by the Kentucky Water Resource Research Institute in 2022. And I'm just going to give you a couple. There's a wealth of this is a great tool and resource if you're not familiar with it, because it has a wealth of information as the status of Kentucky's water and wastewater systems. The thing that I would keep in mind is that even though it's relatively new at 2022, I think that we have moved past some of the statistics that are in this document, and I think some of the numbers are worse than what I'm going to purport to you today. But 20% of the survey respondents were less than 35 years old, while 2% were less than 25 years old. And so, that statistic's very clear, what we touched on, that aging population, attrition, all the things that go into our workforce, and then not having the backfill of this younger generation coming in and wanting to be attracted into our workforce. 56% of utilities do not have enough certified water operators, and 65% do not have enough certified wastewater operators. 72% of utilities indicated that operators left the job for better pay, either in another field or recruited, usually by a larger, more progressive utility. 45% of utilities do not have succession plans in place if the current manager or administrative team were to leave. And this statistic's very telling, and I think this number is worse today than it was in 2022. But 30% of operators and 40% of utility managers plan to retire within the next 6 years. And we don't have enough operators and qualified personnel now. And so that's very concerning moving forward. Just from a public water capacity development standpoint, I pulled one of the recent documents that were there. And what this document does is it reviews utilities' capacity, either in a technical, managerial, or financial capacity, and it lists them as either in blue as fully, they have full capacity, or red that they have insufficient capacity in one or all of the criteria that we named. And that map is pretty telling. It's got a little age to it, but it's pretty telling as to where we rank in terms of technical, managerial, and financial capacity of some of our utility systems. So how do we overcome these challenges that face Kentucky's water systems? I think that's going to have to be done by things that we've already talked about, but that seem pretty simple, but could be very complex, and that we could spend the next couple hours talking about this. But I think we're going to have to continue to have technological upgrades to our water systems, both at a treatment capacity standpoint, or a treatment process standpoint, a distribution or collection standpoint. There's a lot of things that we can do from a technology standpoint that will help the other challenges that we face, whether it's workforce, whether it's capacity, whether it's cost. A lot of the technical upgrades that come along with capital investment also improve your operating efficiencies and lower your operating costs, which then help the end ratepayer. Technical assistance, I think technical assistance is going to will become more prevalent than ever. It's going to take not every utility. When 78% of the utilities in Kentucky serve a population of 10,000, they don't have the resources or the operating budget to go out and hire some of the best and the bright that may be diverse in emerging contaminants as it relates to PFAS or lead and copper or all the different things that are out there. Pharmaceuticals, we could talk. There's just, so they're going to rely more and more and more on the capacity of technical assistance providers to come in and bridge the gap and help them overcome some of these barriers and obstacles that are out there. Asset management and capital improvement planning. I can't stress this enough, because typically the model in Kentucky has always been, when it breaks, we'll fix it. And what we found, or where we're at, now is at a crossroads, because how do we overcome the next emergency? How do we stop that? And so I think there's a lot of work to be done. We're doing a lot of work proactively as an association with these utilities to get the data, to get the assets inventoried, to get the condition assessments done, and help these systems develop a capital improvement plan that makes sense. Because you can't, there's, as we've seen with the $766 million investment per year over the next 20 years, there's just not enough monies available to go out and fix everything. And so we've got to figure out and prioritize what needs to be fixed first, what critical infrastructure needs to be addressed immediately, and how do we pay for those things subsequently moving forward. Regional cooperation and consolidation. I know that there's some discussion at the federal level about some new regionalization bills or legislation through US EPA. It's going to be interesting to see how that's promulgated moving forward. But on the local level, there's two different types of what we would consider regionalization efforts in Kentucky. One being that a utility wants to consolidate with another system that's better well run. They want to consolidate their assets. They want to consolidate their manpower. They want their operations, their operating budgets. They want to expand that customer base. Yes, sir.
If you don't mind, can we kind of wrap up real quick? 'Cause we got a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
And I got two more presenters. I hate to cut you short.
Nope. Yes, sir. So regionalization is going to have to be a viable solution for us moving forward, and how we make that work within the, fitting in the local community model. And then, of course, workforce development, professional development. We've got a lot of work to do there. We've got to get people in the pathway. We've got to figure out as an industry how we can incentivize people to come into our industry, and how we can get people attracted to our industry. And then capital and non-capital investment. One thing that I will say is I commend the legislature in your recent efforts and the work that you've done as it relates to funding opportunities for water and wastewater systems. And I'm referencing the Water Management Assistance Fund that was adopted in the 22 General Assembly, and then recently in the 24, the Kentucky Waters Program. 25, we had the House Joint Resolution that authorized the $65 million that would be allocated in the current fiscal year, and now applications are open for the next. And so I'll leave you with this. The thing that really caught my attention in the Kentucky Waters bill, if you've been following that, is that in that bill, there was $75 million available, and we had over $733 million in request. So it shows the need for continuing funding opportunities for that. The great thing about the Kentucky Waters Program is it specified capital and non-capital. So I think we've got a huge opportunity to bring some of these systems up from an operating capacity standpoint to get them where they may qualify for more traditional funding opportunities. And I'll answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. I appreciate it very much. We have a question from Representative Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Young, also for that presentation. Of course, like many, I'm probably concerned by the figures that you had as far as 30% of operators and 40% of utility managers planning to retire over the next 6 years. Is there any opportunity to work with those on Fort Campbell, those at Fort Knox who will be separating, to work on getting them into the registered apprenticeship program, where we can A, address the shortfall that's coming, and B, keep our people, our men and women in uniform in the state of Kentucky, adding to our workforce as they separate?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. That program is open to anyone. They do have to be involved. The way that the way that the program is structured regarding the Department of Labor, they do have to be employed with a utility to enter into that pathway, or a company that manages or has the capacity to manage. So there's some requirements there. But yes, to answer your question, yes, and we need to expand that footprint pretty rapidly.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Senator Smith?
Yeah, just a very short question. Has there been any attempts to go after funding where we could grant amnesty to these antiquated systems in the past, to have, because that's the reason. It's all about money. And I'm sure that we've seen some monkey business in the past, but that stuff is sorted out locally. But if you've got a failing system that wants to come forward, very often they've got so much encumbered debt for fines that for the state to happen, their money be eaten up just paying the past fines and violations before they could even get it up to code. Is there amnesty that other states have looked at, where if you come forward with a failing system from a small town, that we're able to give you a one-time buyout or upgrade, and then after that you have to sort of play by the rules to make sure this doesn't happen again?
That is an excellent question, because what you're referencing has typically been a barrier for the well-run systems that want to come in and potentially take over or assist a system, but they don't want to incur either that debt associated with it. They don't, it could be a technical expertise issue where it's going to take a huge portion of their resources to bring them up to compliance. And then you get into the sheer fact of the enforcement aspect of what's going on with that community. Do they want to take that over? Will their system be penalized? And so I think that is a discussion. Well, let me back up to answer your question more specifically. There are some other states that we're trying to get some information to see how they're handling that. But I think that is a conversation that we need to have with the cabinet, and see what flexibility that they have within their, as primacy, they have certain obligations and requirements that they have to meet in regard to US EPA, and they have a job to do. So I think we need to have a broader discussion to see how we can make that model possibly work in Kentucky.
Mr. Chairman, just to close, I also think, because some of these are federal fines, that there may be in the amnesty where you get both the state and the Fed to waive some of the outstanding violations, which these can be $10,000, $15,000 a day in some cases. So I really do think that that is the way forward for us to be able to help these cities come forward, offer them something, and then once we do, we get it straightened out, so it's not a patchwork quilt where every county has all these little different ways of doing it. But that's what I think is our pathway forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. And our last question on this subject is Representative Freeland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question. I appreciate the presentation. Had a conversation with one of our state park directors, and some of our state parks have wastewater treatment centers, and they were not too happy about having to run wastewater treatment plants. And one of my questions is would you support, or any other states where you see maybe local governments absorbing maybe some of the state parks where they don't have to operate wastewater treatment plants? I mean, it might be a good idea. A lot of these state parks are kind of operating out of compliance. They don't have certified operators right now, so maybe getting out of the business of a state park running wastewater treatment plants.
I think that's a great idea. And I know from a rural waters perspective, we have provided technical assistance to a lot of these certified operators that are at these plants or at these state parks, to try to help them stay in compliance and assist them from a technical standpoint. And of course, regardless of who the operator is, they still have a responsibility to meet their KPDS discharge permit requirements, whether it's the state-owned system being enforced by the state or so have it. But yes, I give you an example that I use is in the utility that I used to manage. We ran a 9-mile pipeline, sewer force main, to eliminate a point source issue that we had at our state park and hook them to the municipal system. I think that that's the way to go moving forward, is to get them on some type of public treatment facility.
Okay, just one last question. That would require, I guess, the state doing something, changing
Yes,
the
sir.
regs to do that, I guess.
Yes, and it's not, sometimes it's not feasible from a capital improvement standpoint to pay the cost associated with it. So, but you could enter into some type of management agreement where a utility system would be willing to operate the system. The problem with that is the increased operating expenses that we're seeing to manage some of these, and then the capital investment that's needed to keep those up to where they meet the permit requirements.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Scott, for coming today, and appreciate all the knowledge that you've shared with us. I'm sure we'll have a great deal more conversation about this, and I'm sorry we got to rush into it. We got two more presenters we want to get to, and thank you for your time. And you provided us all the information, but we will be in touch with you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next presenter is from Martin County. We've heard a little bit about Martin County over the years, and we got the new chairman from there for the Water and Wastewater Board. He's been with them, I think, about 8 months now. So, Tim, if you don't mind, introduce yourself and begin your presentation. We are going to have to cut it tight. So, if you can talk about the key highlights and give the Tug River about 10 or 15 minutes, we'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Representative McCool. It's an honor and privilege to be here today to talk with you about Martin County Water and Sanitation districts. Today I want to talk about the objectives, current status, strategic plan. I've got some legislative recommendations, safer water recommendations, and a summary. Thank you. Our objectives in Martin County is to provide quality water and wastewater services at a reasonable price, with having quality infrastructure and treatment systems. The goal here today for me is to inform our legislative professionals our current status of our infrastructure in the intent of obtaining legislative actions that will enable us to reach our endeavors. The current status, Human Resources, Martin County Water and Sanitation Districts is under contract with Alliance Water Resources to operate our water and wastewater systems. The district lacks the funding to provide the necessary tools and equipment and maintenance to provide quality water at an affordable price. The folks there in Martin County, they want to do the right thing. Their heart's in the right place. They just don't have the resources to do it. And it touches on the next thing, the financial resources. The district does not generate enough revenue to operate and maintain our infrastructure. Funding to provide infrastructure, repair equipment, truck replacement, maintenance costs are necessary for us to obtain our objectives. The physical resources, when I first got on the board in September, I walked our infrastructure and looked at everything. And in the 40 years that I've been in water and wastewater business, and I am a subject matter expert in water and wastewater, I've never seen infrastructure in the shape I've seen in the 40 years I've been doing this. And the lack of an investment is impossible for the ratepayers to overcome. And in fact, you could raise the rates as high as you wanted to raise them, and you couldn't fix the problem. And the only solution is for us to try to fix the problem, but if we do, we'll drive the district into bankruptcy or receivership, for that matter. Our water district has approximately 3,450 customers. We generate about $2.9 million a year. The customers have the second highest rates in the state, and we're one of the poorest counties. So you can imagine, well, when I moved to Inez from Cincinnati several years ago, I was paying $120 to $160 a quarter for water. And in Martin County, I pay $160 to $200 a month for water and sewer. So is just incredible to me. That $2.9 million is enough money to operate. It's not enough to maintain. It's not enough for capital projects. It's enough money to operate. We have about 230 miles of distribution, 19 booster stations. Our water treatment plant's designed to treat 2.2 million gallons a day, and right now we're treating about 1.2 million gallons a day. And I'm happy to say that when I got on the board, our leak rate was approximately 71%, and we reported last month we're down to 45%. What's driving that? We changed out our water meters. That was a $2 million grant. That drove part of that. Also, we got aggressive on leak repairs. The board's of the opinion that, yes, it costs money to fix leaks, but it also costs money to have leaks. So we're aggressively fixing those leaks. Financially, the district borrowed money before my time in February 2024 to pay off debt. We were at a zero. We were in the black. And since that time, we're negative $364, or we're in the red, $364,000. And that number has climbed since I put this presentation together. And what drove that is line leak repairs, storm damage. Martin County in the February storm event suffered $3 million in infrastructure damage, for which we're still trying to recover from insurance, from FEMA, from Kentucky Emergency Management. And also the raw water intake. It's a project that Big Sandy had as the administrator started in 2019. In 2020, it was designed. In 2021, it went to the field. In 2024, I walked it. It was one of the first things I looked at. And when I walked it, I seen National Electric Code violations, mechanical code violations. And I looked at the pump for which they had installed before they ever started up, and I said, the pump will never work. Why do I know that? Because I do this for a living. That's what I do. I run a national company that does water, wastewater across the country, but mainly for industrial and commercial clients. But I looked at it and said, it'll never work. And it didn't. They started up and it didn't work. So the districts had to fund temporary pump, diesel fuel, in the tune we spent over $700,000 trying to keep our reservoir full so we can provide water to our customers. You can see here some pictures of the water treatment system condition. Now, raw water intake, that pretty orange pump on the yellow trolley looks nice. It doesn't work. There's a picture of inside the plant. You see all the corrosion. That's our active water treatment plant. When I walked inside that plant, I was taken back. I've never seen a plant in the shape this plant's in. Water treatment system major issues, piping system leak rate. I'm happy to say we're down to 45%, but I'm not happy with 45%. The state recognizes 15%. But in reality, Eastern Kentucky works off of high pressure systems. High pressure system common leak rate's 20%. So our goal is to get to 20%. Many of our booster stations do not have.
Mr. Chairman, so you said you're down to 45%, but it's also important to let them know what you were before.
71%.
Okay.
We were at 71%. Many of our booster stations don't have redundancy. And so what they've done is they were designed and built with redundancy, but because they didn't have the money to repair them, they robbed from one to fix another. So now you're down to one pump each. And we don't have emergency generators, but we did get a FEMA grant. I'm happy to say that, the way FEMA works is you have to go out and borrow the money, spend the money, and then give your receipts to FEMA, and then they reimburse you. And for a district that doesn't have the funds, how do you get the money so you can get the grant? Because you got to give them receipts. That makes no sense to me. But, so we did. We were blessed. We were able to go out and borrow the money. And so now we're putting in emergency generators for three stations. We have a total of, from memory, 19, but at least we'll have 3 that will provide roughly 60-70% of water when we have power failures, which in the wintertime happens quite frequently. The treatment plant needs many subsystems updated. When I walked the treatment plant, the thing that amazed me, there was all this equipment and all this electrical and sub panels, and I'm looking at it, and it looks dormant. And I said, why is that? And they said, well, we no longer use that. We use this. It costs too much money to tear it out and do it right, so they just left it. So, and I'm all about doing it right. Sanitation district data. We have 850 customers. We generate $950,000 in per annum in revenue. And again, we've got the second highest rates in the state for the poorest county. 80 miles of collection system, 12 lift stations, And we have two wastewater treatment plants. We have the INS plant that's designed for 0.26 million gallons a day. It operates around 0.13 million gallons a day. And the Tug Valley plant is designed for 0.26 million gallons and operates around 0.1. And I will say the INS plant has not passed a discharge standard in 5 years to my knowledge. I went back 5 years in the records. Has not passed. And I'll show you a picture of that here shortly. Now, the question is why? Because that was my question, why? I went out and toured the plant. Well, it's easy to figure out why. Because nothing works out there. It's basically pumping water through concrete with nothing working. And so we were able to get a grant for $685,000 to rehab that plant. By the time the design permitting it went out for bid, the bids came back, we're $120,000 short from doing the bare minimum to get the plant to where it can even come close to meeting the discharge standard. So currently we're trying to source that $120,000 so we can do the job. So the picture you see on your left is a aeration channel where a big part of the treatment takes place. And those, when you see the rusty looking object, that's the aerator that hasn't worked in many years. And then so what the district did is we went out and bought used mixers to try to create some aeration so we have some form of treatment until we can get the plant fixed. The picture you see on the right, the clean water is what's in the stream. What's coming into the stream, that's the discharge from the plant. I've never seen that in my 40 years. I've never seen that.
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
I'm sorry, we're going to have to get down to the final few comments if you can.
Okay.
Because I'm going to have one more presenter. And I appreciate what you're doing. We do have the information in hand, so we can look at that. And certainly, if we have questions, we can bring that to you at a later time too. But if
okay,
you
let
want to
me
make
just
some final few comments, then we'll.
Let me just touch on a few things real quick. We're working through some legal aspects that we've got to work through with Big Sandy Ad. We're working on our capital projects. We're currently working on a master plan for water, a master plan for sanitation, which you have to have. We're also working on getting the FEMA money and the insurance dollars we need to fix what was damaged. From a legislative perspective, I would ask that the legislature look at what I call set-asides or money focused on distressed systems and communities, similar to Martin County. I'd also ask that the legislature look at putting in place under the ads metrics for which they're measured. So, for example, I'm only familiar with Big Sandy Ad. I can't speak to all the other ads, but those folks that I deal with, they're not construction management professionals like myself. They're not engineers like myself. And I think that those folks need to have that background if they're going to manage capital projects.
Thank you. We do have a question, one question from Representative Lafferty, if we could.
I will be brief, Chairman. Thank you very much. I know this is very important to you as well. I want to say thank you very much for coming today. Your testimony is very important. As we heard earlier today, they talked about how it's important to fund water projects in these growing industries, growing economies. But I think your testimony is very important as to why we need to invest in water projects in shrinking communities as well. Because aside from the safety aspect, which should be the number one priority of the safety of our drinking water, this is why we can't attract some businesses to some areas. You know, we travel with our economic development committee, and often we hear, why do we choose these places? Well, because we have good roads, good water, good internet. Well, if we want to grow our economy in eastern Kentucky, similar to some of these places that need other water investments, we need to invest in places such as Martin County, and Floyd County and throughout eastern Kentucky to make sure that we can attract businesses as well with good water, good roads, and good internet services. So thank you. I think you've given us a great view today of what the problem is overall in eastern Kentucky. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have one question for clarification. You said there's about 850 customers for Martin County. Is that total?
On sanitation side.
Just on the sanitation side.
There's 3,450 on the water side.
Okay.
So in one slide, please pay particular attention to legislative, financial, and execution requests, because that really sums up the presentation as far as what we're looking for in Martin County, and Rep Tackett Lafferty. Thank you for that comment, because one of the things that we recognize is in Martin County, if we had the infrastructure, sanitation and water, we could utilize our industrial park to attract industry so that we wouldn't have a mass exodus of our high school and young people out of our area, because they're going to go to where jobs are. But we've got to have the infrastructure to make it happen.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Seeing no other questions, I do thank you for your time. Sorry that we had to cut you short.
It's okay.
Mr. Chairman, do appreciate the information. I'm sure we'll be in greater conversation at a later time. If you don't mind, we'll go ahead and get the next group coming forward. I think we got to get one lady. She's on Zoom, perhaps. Okay. Madison is on Zoom, and she's actually on vacation somewhere on the beach, I think. But anyway, she thought it was very important. This group, hey Madison, this group is very important. They're volunteers and talk about Tug River and the Friends of Tug River. And why does that impact all of us? Or how does it impact all of us? It does, because Tug River runs into the Big Sandy, which runs into Ohio. And so we all have the same system, and they've done a great job. Just want to give a little bit of, share with you some work that they've done. We got about 15 minutes, but before you start, if I could have Representative Moore make a comment so I don't miss out on that, and then we'll begin.
Thanks so much, Mr. Chair. Just a very quick announcement. I want to invite everyone to Lexington next month, August 21st. It's a Thursday at noon. We're going to have a ribbon cutting event for a new Veterans Unity Point. It's a center for all veterans to come together with no memberships, no expectations, a place similar to an MWR or USO you may have had downrange, but a place for veterans to come together in Lexington. So again, that has been a labor of love for the Lexington Commission on Veterans Affairs. We're doing that ribbon cutting on Thursday, the 21st, at 12 p.m. in Lexington. So welcome everyone to come and join me for that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative. Now, if you don't mind, introduce yourself. Make sure the little green light's on, and begin your presentation. But hit the highlights if you don't care, because we got, like I said, about 12 minutes. What we've got. Thank you.
Absolutely. Can everyone hear me in the room? Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
Awesome. Thank you. So just a quick brief introduction about who I am, and thank you, Bobby McCool, for allowing me and some of my team members to be here today to speak. Just a little background. My name is Madison Mooney. I'm from Martin County, Eastern Kentucky, born and raised in the area. Graduated from Sheldon Clark in 2014, then had the honor and privilege to advance my careers and studies at Alice Lee College and the University of Kentucky. And then in 2021, I was able to find my way back home to Eastern Kentucky and Martin County, which allowed me to pursue my career at Lycan Knowledge, which is abbreviation to Livelihood Knowledge Exchange Network. I do a lot of different types of water work in Eastern Kentucky. This is just kind of like a different little photo collage of what those types of works are, between cleanups, tap testing, and providing education and information to Eastern Kentucky residents through the work that I do with Lycan and Martin County Concerned Citizens. Just a brief little bulleted list of the things that our goal is to cover today. And I know we need to be super brief. And I know you guys have these slides in your folders. And so if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to ask. So just real quick, the reason why I'm here today is because of a conversation that I had with Bobby McCool in April after the second devastating of the floods. Because of that conversation, he invited me to speak here today about some of the work that I do with Friends of the Tug Fork, along with some other work that's happening across.
Uh-oh. I don't know if we can jump in.
I don't even know if we can control the slides.
Let's see.
Well, do we want to go ahead and jump in with where we would be on our slides?
Yes.
Yes,
Sure.
go
Okay.
ahead.
All right. So I'm Nina McCoy. I'm also on the Martin County Water Board, as well as a member of Martin County Concerned Citizens, president of Martin County Concerned Citizens. And you've probably all heard that in 2000, Martin County was the horrible recipient of 3.5 million gallons of toxic coal waste. Well, after that time, the citizens of our community never really felt like they got answers. And for 17 years, we got notifications once every 3 months that our water was over the limit in what we now know are disinfection byproducts. And so every 3 months for 17 years, we got these warnings. And so that led to basically trauma around our water system. So one of the things that Madison has worked with us on is when in 2017, Martin County Concerned Citizens worked with Appalachian Citizens Law Center to intervene in the third investigation into the Martin County Water District since the sludge spill. And in that time, we showed that we were very concerned about what was in our water. So, Appalachian Citizens Law Center helped us get with UK Cares, and the UK professors there were able to do a study in 2019. And that study was basically going to 97 homes randomly. We were just giving addresses, knocking on the door, collecting a sample if they were willing to do that, and then testing what was in that water. Now, the good news is, what we found is that none of the heavy metals that we worried about from a slurry spill or coal waste were found. But what we did find is that 35% of the homes were over the limit in disinfection byproducts, which again was what we got notifications on for so many years. We also had a study at that time of how the citizens felt about the water system. And on this, what we found out was that 88% of the people said they did not drink the water. So that many years, 19 years after the slurry spill, we were still traumatized by our water. It's really not much better now as far as what our feelings are about it because of so many years of this. Well, then if we go to the next slide. We seem to be missing a slide. In the next, the University of Kentucky did is got a bigger grant. So after 2019, we've been working for the last 5 years on a bigger study of disinfection byproducts throughout the county. And those results will be coming out soon. But along with the tap water, we are also testing the source water. Because remember, that's what we cannot forget, that our water is not manufactured. It is coming from the river and has to be treated in so many different ways. So what we're trying to do with the University of Kentucky is understand, how does what's in the source water affect what's in the drinking water? So those results will be out in probably September or October. So Representative McCool, we'd love for you to come to our explanation to the community about this.
Okay, thank you. Did you introduce yourself?
I am Nina McCoy.
And Nina is with the Martin County Concerned Citizens.
I did tell them.
Yes, and I'm Deborah Thompson. I'm the Impact Director for the Livelihoods Knowledge Exchange Network, a nonprofit that Madison also works for. So I'll back up and show a little more of these other slides as well. So getting back to the Tug Fork River, let's see. Yeah, so Tug Fork, the Tug Fork River is the boundary between Kentucky and West Virginia, in this part in Martin and Pike counties. And so sorry, I have to get used to this mouse here. Wanted to talk a little bit about the Friends of the Tug Fork River, which is the organization that Madison and Nina are both on the board for. And so Friends of the Tug Fork River was formed, actually started out with some friends, some folks who were very interested in fishing and in the cleanliness of the river, and started with a Facebook group. But then it grew into a nonprofit, including John Burchett, who used to work for the Department of Environmental Protection for the state of West Virginia. And so he contacted the West Virginia DEP for ideas on how to help clean up the river. And so they provided this machine and through this Rehabilitation Environmental Action Plan. And this, a lot of the different communities along the Tug Fork River had worked to do these small cleanups, but it's very difficult to get a lot of these large tires out of the river. And so this machine was very helpful in getting out some of the biggest tires. And so this is the largest tire that was brought out, but it's hard to imagine how much it takes to bring that out of the river. So this is one of the things that I was struck by with the Tug Fork River is that the banks are so high. You know, you look at the river, it's way down there, and you think, oh, we're safe from here. But when it floods, it'll still climb up just 20, 30 feet up the banks. And so getting these tires out of the river is also very difficult. So this large machinery is really helpful. So just to give you a little sense of what this group has been able to do, this is a volunteer nonprofit organization. They've been able to, updating it to 2025, they've taken out about 16,000 tires out of the river. So this is a really important aspect of trying to keep our waterways clean, like Nina was talking about. And it was approved as a nonprofit in 2022. So want to move then quickly through our studies and talk just for a moment about Lichen Knowledge. And so we partnered with the Friends of the Tug Fork River on a grant from the federal government, $3.1 million over 3 years, to document forest and river-related economy and traditions along the Tug Fork River. And so what we're doing is working with landowners to help them improve their value for their forests so they don't feel like they have to just go and cut down their trees, to help them clear their land ownership titles as well if they have problems with that, and to improve agro and ecotourism. So now let me move on to, why is this not moving? There we go. And move on to Ella, if you want to introduce yourself.
Absolutely. My name is Ella Helmuth. I'm a staff attorney at Appalachian Citizens Law Center. We represent Martin County Concerned Citizens, and I've talked to several of you before. We also do a lot of policy work on natural disasters and rural water problems. It is really hard to talk about river health in Eastern Kentucky without thinking about flood debris. So because a lot of debris cleanup and dredging decisions are happening to some degree at the state level, we think it's really important to share our goals about debris removal in Eastern Kentucky. So when you are doing debris removal after a flood, you want to remove flood-related debris while improving the river structure. We don't want to postpone recovery of riparian areas, which can harm source water for drinking water, which is going to cause problems with the outdoor recreation economy, by doing things like ripping up the sides of rivers, right? Because those things exist as natural blocks for flooding. They exist as natural filters for drinking water. You go to the next slide. Mm-hmm. So people are really eager to start cleaning up after a flood, and sometimes these contracts go through really quickly. We have had problems in the past with out-of-state contractors removing things like large trees, things that were alive and there before the flood, because they're often paid by the ton and they're not supervised very well. And so they end up doing sometimes more harm than good to the river and causing more problems for later flooding. I also just wanted to talk a little bit about the difference between dredging and debris removal, because I think we get that mixed up sometimes. So debris removal, you're getting all that trash out, things like fallen trees, trailers, propane tanks like we were talking about earlier. With dredging, you're actually using heavy machinery to remove sediment on the bottom of the river. There's a place and time for dredging, but we do see it cause a lot of problems in terms of increasing the velocity of water. Then if you're dredging in one place, you're getting worse flooding downstream. You're causing a problem for your neighbors. All right.
And thank you for that. We talked about that earlier as well. We agree with you that certainly something needs to be done. And again, I apologize for having to cut short, but we've got 1 minute that we actually have to.
You're fine.
leave.
I'm all done.
I did get a message from Madison. She apologized, but they just got hit with a tropical storm wherever she's at, so she didn't get to complete her presentation. But she does a fantastic job, and I appreciate you all.
Can I just sum up I have our last slide
Yeah.
just to sum up, please. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you all hearing us today. And we just recognize that there's so much work to be done, and that Friends of the Tug Fork River and lots of other organizations like ACLC, as well as the Kentucky Waterways Alliance, are doing great work. But we need your help. We need the help of the state. So we want to just try to ask that you be mindful of future opportunities for working with groups like ours, like our nonprofits. Even though we're small, we're mighty. We can really take on a lot of this kind of cleanup if we get some support. So Madison just wanted to say that she was taught in Martin County to not drink the tap water. She doesn't want future generations to feel that way and to fear their water. So I hope that you will work with us to help improve our waterways. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for your presentation, and I may say too, if you don't mind, your all's work has led other communities to start doing the same thing. So thank you for your hard work, and appreciate that. Appreciate your presentation today. Apologize for we having to cut things short, but we are actually out of time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all so much. Do we have any other comments by anybody? Questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.